I just have to. Shit, I was so close to being ready, and then I forgot to get this one going. Sorry, give me 1 second.
Yeah, that's all good, buddy.
Give me 1 sec. I had the video part set up, just not this one. I just have to transfer this in for 1 second, and then desktop right here. Okay, you probably hear. You can probably listen to the intro if you want, really quick, and it might help. And then we'll just take the headphones off, or you'll hear it. So, okay. Probably hear it a little bit. Can you hear it?
Yeah, I can hear it from the.
Funny story about this. This guy, so basically I went on this thing called Fiverr, and it is just freelance guys. The guy's 13 years in the program, is willing to be a guest or offered to be a guest on the show.
Nice.
Yeah, he's from the States somewhere. I don't know who the fuck he is or what, right? But
yeah.
He's just, what are the odds, right?
Yeah, perfect voice, so like announcer voice, like to the T, right?
Yeah, be like, you recognize that voice? You know? Well, guess what? All right. I don't even. Oh, Cody. I was gonna say, I don't even know your name. Yeah. All right. Oh shit! I didn't mean to do that. Okay, here we go. All right, welcome to the show today. I got a great guest on the show from Red Deer. His name's Cody. Cody comes with about 4 years experience in the program, or 4 years of recovery under his belt. And a little quirky fact about Cody is he's known as the Bionic Man. He's got he was in a head-on collision when he was younger, and he's got a whole bunch of plates, like holding them, stitching them together. So, you want to say hi to our listeners, Cody?
Hey, my name's Cody.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So, to get the show started, you know what I like to ask this to everybody is, what was your childhood like?
Well, man, I had a pretty good childhood, right? Like I had a single mom, and my dad passed away when I was pretty young, and he was about 11, I think, and so my mom did the best she could, and kudos to her. Like, yeah, life is good. Like, real tight knit family, like, yeah.
You got any siblings?
No siblings, so I was spoiled, right? First grandchild too, so like super spoiled kid.
First grandchild, for only child, eh?
Yeah.
Nice.
First child and only grandchild, right?
You close with your parents?
I'm close with my mom, yeah. My dad passed away when I was 11, so and I didn't really know him. He was in and out of jail a lot before he passed away, and so like I've seen him a few times in prisons, but other than that, I don't really remember him.
Fair
I
enough.
still see his face, and everything. I know he watches over me and guides me. So
cool. That makes me smile to hear that.
Yeah, man.
You know, my father passed away too about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So from the disease, that's how he died or passed away. How old were you when you first were introduced or tried drugs or drinking?
Probably it was, I bet you I was probably about the time my dad died, 11 or 12, right? Unless you're talking about cigarettes, right? I was smoking cigarettes before that, and just drinking by 12,
yeah. I started smoking cigarettes at the age of 12. Stealing my mother's cigarettes, and like I remember at one point, like I would go and count how many packs of cigarettes she'd have, and then I would go tell her she has like 7 left when she had 8, and then when she said okay, I would steal some, right? And kind of fended my addiction that way, or my cigarette habit that way, and stealing stuff from school. I remember counting the pizza money, and then we'd be scarfing a couple bucks here and there, and cigarettes were only $3.50 a pack back then, right?
Oh wow, that was a while ago, man. They were, I think when I could finally start buying them, I think they were $5.25 or something like that. But I got in lots of trouble for stealing smokes, going to people's houses, stealing their parents' smokes or whoever's.
Yeah. What was your first drink? Like, what was your first experience when you started drinking?
So my first experience was I went right into blackout drinking. Like I partied till I didn't know what the heck was happening, and when I woke up, everybody be like, "Oh man, you know what you did last night?" And it fed this this high that I got like internally, right? I had these like deep rooted self esteem issues, and the attention seeking from my peers, and wanting to be accepted, and people just get so excited about the crazy things that I was doing, and it just fed it, and it just snowballed, right? And but I was pretty young, right? And we were kids, and we couldn't really always get our hands on alcohol, so like we get it when we could, and we'd blackout drink. Well, I blacked out drink till every time, right?
Yeah, every time I drank, I got sick. Every time I drank, I got drunk and I would puke, right? And
Yeah,
that was part of my story too.
yeah.
When was the first time? Like, what was your introduction to drugs?
So I was smoking pot like about the same time, right? Like I was drinking and smoking pot. Pot was a big thing in school, and selling DBs at the smoke pit, and hanging out with the older kids, going to the skate parks and stuff like that. So that's probably they both kind of started at the same time, I would think. Yeah.
How old are you? Just so we can kind of like timestamp this or
Oh,
go back.
so that was when I was like 12 for sure, right? And I'm 37 now.
Okay, we're close to
Yeah,
the same age. I'm
yeah,
coming up on 40, so same
yeah,
period of time, right?
yeah.
I can I can relate. Did you always grow up in Red Deer?
Yeah, yeah. I've lived in Red Deer pretty much all my life. I tried to escape a number of times, and always felt that like I was an addict, right? So I'd go places thinking, move somewhere and try and change the scenery and hope that I could stay clean, and I just never stayed clean, right? And I'd end up homeless or no job, and back to Red Deer I would come, right? And so it's nice, right? I have an acceptance today of where I come from and who I am, and like I love Red Deer. Red Deer's my home, and it's a great city
Nice,
if you're
nice.
with the right people, right?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I like the expression, show me your friends and I'll tell you what you're about.
Yeah, right.
So
Fair
I used
enough.
to hang around with a lot of shady characters, and guess what? I was
Yeah,
a shady fucking character.
yeah,
you know?
that's fair for sure.
Yeah. So did you graduate school?
I did graduate school after being kicked out of the high schools in Red Deer. I was sent to a private school in Lacombe, and I graduated from the Central Alberta Christian School in Lacombe. And by complete miracle, I'm still convinced that they bumped my final exams up on the one class just to get me out, so I wasn't back there another year. So, but I don't know.
You'll take it, eh?
I don't have an actual cash diploma. I just have a diploma from the government because I didn't pass any of the classes. So I did reach out to the principal because he told me if I wrote an essay on who I am that he would sign my diploma, but he's retired now. So I was like, it would have been nice, right? Just to finish something, and
Yep.
check one thing off the box of things to do, right?
I kind of lucked out. I got most of my I was in and out of kiddie jail, and got most of my credits when I was in kiddie jail. And when I got out, I needed like 15 and hammered through it and
Yeah,
just barely squeaked by, like 50%. I remember in grade 12 taking like a grade 10 basic art just to get credits, and I'm like, well, it's not going to take me anywhere, and had no I wasn't going to be going to post secondary school, so I just floated. That was my life, was floating, like just trying to like get by, right?
yeah.
Never motivated.
Yeah, I think mine was like I really only went just as like a people pleasing thing, right? Trying to keep my family happy, and because like I didn't care. I never applied myself. I went there for girls or sell drugs or find out where the next party was so I could go crash it, right, or whatever.
Let's go from like after you graduated school or when you finished school, kind of walk us through like early years of in the real world, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah. So, well, like so I had a friend, and his older brother got us all. We thought we were gonna smoke some pot, and it turns out we were smoking crack. And so, like, even before just before finishing high school, probably I think I was 17 or something like that, and so we basically just became minions to this guy's to our friend's older brother, like, we were running around doing all sorts of mischief and stuff like that. So I mean, I got wrapped up in, crack before finishing school, and it was just a fucking miracle that I even finished school, right? And it wasn't long after that I was introduced to meth, and so like even at 18, I was off to a real poor start, right? Like I lied to myself a lot. I told myself, you're still young, you're just having fun, you can do, you know what I mean, and so it just kind of went on, and I'd have 10 jobs a year, and no stable place to live, back and forth with family, and move here, move there, nothing ever work out, back to Red Deer. So it just kind of went a lot like that. And um, and then when I was about 22ish or so, like I got in a really bad head-on collision, and I got driven from Lacombe to the U of A, and I had like 5 or 6 surgeries, and so I spent a solid month and a half at U of A, like through all the surgeries. They put me in a coma to do a bunch of surgeries, and so I woke up in this hospital, and I thought I was at somebody's house, because I remember the wall, the painting, like the color of the paint on the walls, and it just I don't know. I thought I passed out somewhere, and I went to sit up, and pain just went through my body, and I couldn't sit up, and I realized I was in a hospital, and I didn't recognize the color of the wall, so I knew I wasn't in Red Deer, and it got pretty scary, and I had to do all this physio to start walking again, and uh, eventually I ended up back in the Red Deer Hospital, and I spent probably another 2 3 months in there, and then I was around that time I started dabbling in opioids and prescription drugs, and uh you know it's not that like I was abusing them, but like that was like my first sphere of influence of prescription drugs, and uh and I'm back at home again. I can't get around. I got a cane. Like I had a cane, and I don't know, I always thought that was pretty cool, walking around with the cane, and like pretending like I was a pimp or something, and why even, it's crazy the things you think when you're young, like that you think these are cool. But like I grew up, like a wannabe thug, right? Like people would say stuff like that, right? And in a lot of ways, like we were thugs. Like we threw big parties, like bush parties, and rent town halls and chain up the building and party in the fields and invite every high school, and things were wild, man. Fights, and like we had a couple, like, yeah, like that's just, I guess that's just how it is when you're young, right? And or that's how it was for me. So I don't know. I don't think I really had much of a life as a young man. I wasn't given an opportunity to succeed, right? And even if I'd been given it, I wasn't willing to take it, right? I was walking this path that I chose to walk, and yeah, and it's crazy that that was my feelings about it, was as well. I'm young. I got lots of time to change, and then next thing you know, you're 30 something, and you're like, what the heck did I do with my life? you know uh,
I you know what, I can relate. Like my story's similar too. I got hurt when I was 19 and fell 25, 30 feet and was off, right? And to wake up every day and look out the window and say, what do I do today? Was fucking party like a rock star, right?
yeah.
Like it was a way of life. And then yeah, it kind of transitions, and all of a sudden it just becomes life, right?
Yeah.
It becomes the norm. At any point, like, so you had the accident at 22. How long was your recovery? And then you said you started getting into the pills. Um, was that kind of a decline, or did you go back to the crack?
Yeah. So like I never actually, like, I don't feel like I was ever an opioid abuser, right? If I was, it was because I was like, at a couple different instances in my life, I was double scripting, and I was, doing shady things, and so in that sense, right, I'm abusing the prescriptions that I was given, but I wasn't ever like taking them because I was, right, I was back to the crack and the meth, and so I didn't need them, right? It was just an income source to feed my main addictions.
Yeah, that wasn't your drug of choice, in other words.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. No.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
At any point did you realize or think to yourself, like, I got a fucking problem?
Definitely lots of times, like I remember, waking up in drunk tanks. One time I woke up in a drunk tank and I went to go use the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I got this, black eye coming on and I was, working up north at the time and all the guys were playing this boxing game on Xbox. And so like in the boxing game, there's like a toggle switch on the Xbox, right? And so the guy heals your eye, use the toggle switch and rub it back and forth, and buddy rubs your eye and heals your eye, right? And in the insanity of all of it, I'm like looking in the mirror and I'm like, well, I better fix my eye. And I start rubbing my eye and it just blew right up, right? And I get out of jail and I go back to my friend's house, who's, the mother of my youngest son today. And at the time, and she was just like laughing at me, like, what did you do to your eye? Like, uh, and I didn't even really know, right? And eventually we figured out the story and it got down to it. And but there was just so many instances like that, right, where I could see, like, I never remembered what I was doing, and I was like this. And all my friends, they could drink and they remembered what they did because they'd tell me all the dumb shit that I did. But I never remembered, like, I don't know. Some people say that you have like an allergy to alcohol, and especially for Aboriginal people, right? I identify as Métis, and maybe that's the case for me, but that's every time, man, every time.
Did you ever try quitting on your own?
Definitely, a million times in every single way that there was, right? I would say, well, I just won't drink whiskey anymore. I'll just drink beer, right? And I better not drink at all. I'll just smoke pot. And oh well, as long as I'm just partying on weekends and not weekdays, I've yet to hear anybody share their experience of a way that they tried to manage their addiction, because I did try. I tried it all, man. There was
Did What was your introduction to recovery then? Like, did you know about recovery or the 12-step fellowship when you were trying to quit on your own?
uh no, like I really, my sphere of influence for recovery was just like ADAC workers, uh detoxes and treatment centers, right? And so I went to a number of them, and yeah, they just never worked for me, right? I went to a treatment center I went to a detox in Calgary, and then I got into a treatment program in Calgary, and I completed their program, but then was like living there and working, and I ended up relapsing, right? And it didn't work out for me. I went to another treatment center in Calgary twice, and I got kicked out both times for like attendance nonsense. Really, it was ridiculous. Like, um, I went to Thorpe, or I went to a treatment center in Lloyd, and I got kicked out of there for fighting, and then yeah, and then this last go around when I came into recovery, uh, I went to a treatment center here in Edmonton, and I was able to complete the program and stick it out, and I even walked in there, I think, with like, I don't know, 7 months clean or something like that when I walked in there.
What
Yeah.
was your what would Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Um yeah, we'll get into the recovery here. This is what I love about this podcast. Well, do you want to just kind of share with everybody what your bottom looked like here, and then we'll transition to
Yeah, so I've been blessed to ask to share my story on a number of occasions now, and the more that I talk about it, it's crazy to think the bottoms that I hit, right? Because I hit a bottom and then I would hit another bottom, and I'd be like, life can't get any worse than this, and I would hit another bottom, and and it's a miracle that I'm still alive. But I guess I can share, like, so leading up to my arrest, when I my last arrest, I was up for days. I was driving around with loaded gun trying to find people, uh with the full intent to use my gun, and an ego inflated pride thing that was, it's a miracle that I was up for so many days, and that, we got tired of looking and we went back to the spot, and to do what we do, right? And then I ended up passing out, because, like, who knows what my life, I'd probably be sitting in a jail cell, to this day, and probably for a really long time, if I would have kept at it. So and it's sad, right? Like I woke up on an acreage surrounded by cops, and there's numerous stolen property, and so my bottom actually really came in that instant, right? Realizing the insanity that I put myself in, right? That I was all of a sudden became this person, that was willing to do whatever. Uh, but it ultimately too, it had a lot to do with the things that I had. I had a friend, and for most of my life, and in a roundabout way, I ended up with some property and a bunch of things, right? And because I was an addict, feeding my addiction, I did some pretty stupid things, and I burnt the trust of a friend, and so that was a big part of one of my bottoms, is that I'd never done those things. I didn't do my friends wrong. I was I was solid, right? And it was just one of those things, right? But I'm grateful for it, right? I'm grateful that God was looking out, and he was there, right? And in the form of a bunch of police officers arresting me, right? Because when I sat in the back of that cop car, I never felt such tremendous relief, right? The gig was up, and I didn't have to carry on living the way that I was living, because it was ridiculous. I had a number of things happening, um, that were, like trying to cover a sphere of influence of people to do what I needed to get done, and keep feeding my addiction. It was meticulous, and it was like it's my own addiction was hard to manage, right? And here I'm trying to shuffle and work with 12, 15 other addicts, do their thing to get me what I need, right? And so, like, that was the relief, right? That I didn't have to carry on in the insanity anymore, right? The full realization of what I was doing the night before, and right, because when I woke up, I had to, yeah, the whole process of it all. Yeah.
What a relief that is too, like you almost get that sense of peace. Like, and when you're describing this, like I can picture it and I can feel it, where you just all of a sudden, yeah, when you say the gig is up, you're just like, you just throw in the towel and it's time, right? Like
Yeah.
you just feel like it's time, like enough's enough, and it's time for a change, right?
Yeah, right. Well, and yeah, it was crazy though.
So how did you? So you went to a bunch of treatment places. You said, take us through this time, why it was different. Like how would you do differently this time to make this clean date stick?
Well, so I'd found some of the fellowships, right, and prior, and so I would go, but I didn't, like the moment it was over, I was gone, and I was just there to boast attendance to the family or whatever, make it look like I'm doing something with my life and trying to change, and so it really had nothing to do with the fellowship, and but I heard some things that made me remember to come back, right, and but it didn't work, right. For me at the time, I didn't want to change. I wasn't there to change. I was there for appearance purposes only, right? And so I would relapse. I'd go back out. I'd end up in jail. I would get out and I would do it again, right? And so I went to jail on a couple of occasions for short periods of time, and uh, so when it after the arrest that I got, when I stayed clean, because I my clean date's August 13th, 2018, and so that was the morning that I woke up, right, on an acreage surrounded by cops. It was my first 24 hours, because I didn't have a chance to get high. I had to stash all the shit, unload all the guns, and go out and surrender. And it was only that I'd went out and surrendered that, like, I closed the door behind me, and so they went in and found everything and then called for a warrant. So I went from looking at like 7, who knows how, 5, 7, 10 years, who knows, to 90 days on just what I had on my persons, and for breach of conditions and probation and stuff like that, right? And so I spent my first 90 days in recovery, actually in jail, right? And I used in jail, and I made brew in jail, and I knew lots of people in jail, like, um but like the bottom that I hit, and realizing what I had done to my friend and his family, right? the insanity of like literally the danger that I was willing to inflict and endure at the time was crazy, right? And I had a phone call, with a family member that had my daughter, and I was, requesting to ask to speak to my daughter, and I was told, well, what's the point? Like, she doesn't even know your voice. She doesn't even know who you are. Why do you want to talk to her? And it just fueled the fire of my bottom, and so I remember that. I remember, like, it's like fucking emotional just thinking about it, the feelings that I felt in that moment. um so when I got out, I was really lucky. I actually had plans, with another guy in jail, and I burnt the majority of the bridges, right? Like, and I went to put myself in the, you know place that I was, right? And so this guy was getting out, and I was getting out, a week later, and I was supposed to meet up with this guy. And I walked out of a jail cell with nothing, and I didn't have any money. I had what I walked out of the jail with, and none of my family wanted to talk to me. I didn't have a place to live, and nowhere to go. And but I knew that I didn't want to live the way that I was living. And I eventually found a transition house. Later on that day, I actually got into this transition house, and so I stayed there. And I lived with other people that just got out of jail, and yeah, it was a good experience. It was a faith based transition house, and so we were required to do all these things. But I had a roof over my head, and I was gonna start getting welfare. And you know I I had some faith. I had some faith because I burnt my life to the ground a million times, and so I knew that I could make something of myself again, right? And even but in the back of my mind, right, I still had this idea that like I could still do the old things with the old people. I could, and thank God that I found some of the rooms, right? And one of the room, I actually left the one day to go to a meeting. And when I left the building, there's a bunch of people standing outside of what was underneath where I was staying. And so I started chatting with them for a bum of smoke or whatever, right? Because I was just hurting and poor. And turns out there was a meeting there, right? And so I ended up finding a home there. And I just kept
Nice.
coming back because I was there to change this time. I was willing to you know stick around a little bit because something was happening there that I didn't quite understand, right? Something was working, and nothing worked for me. And I tried everything that I possibly could.
Looking back, can you pinpoint what was like your motivator that first year?
My children,
Yeah.
the biggest motivator was my children, right? And my wife too. Like, I didn't know where my wife was when I got out of jail. And yeah, no access to my kids. I wasn't allowed to see them, you know.
I went through that too.
Yeah.
In one of my relapses, I had an EPO and had to go back to court and fight for them. So I feel for you there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, what was one of the biggest struggles you had that first your first bit?
Usually, a great majority of my struggles, I think, were, about my relationship, right, with my wife, and not knowing where she was, and worrying about her. And, I remember that first bit because nobody knew where she was, right? And, it was scary. And
Question for you here. Oh, I just actually drew a blank. What was I gonna ask you here? Did you have any goals your first year there? Like that's one I like to ask because
yeah, to stay clean just for today.
that's at the end of the day, like that's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah, no, I had goals, man. I wanted access to my kids, right? And like, my kids were my aim. My kids are still my aim today.
How long did it take you to kind of get access to them, or what would you have to
Yeah.
do to get to them?
Yeah, so I mean, I got some phone calls, right? And then I was able to do some supervised visits. And it took me a long time. uh like, I think I spent probably like 5 or 6 months in this transition house before I was able to afford to rent a room, right? And so I rented a room off this lovely lady in Lacombe, uh, and at that time I started washing dishes. It was like the only job I could get, and I'm sure I was still looking like a greasy gangbanger probably at the time, right? And so, anyways, I got this job washing dishes, and I was able to start afford to being able to afford hair follicle tests, right? And as soon as I started doing hair follicle tests, I started being able to have unsupervised time with my kid, with my daughter, not my son. I was able to see my son, but I wasn't able to see him unsupervised. Um, but yeah, and then I started having sleepovers, with my daughter, and it was just fuel, right? And I remember her coming and spending, and she wanted something at the dollar store, and like I did literally didn't even have $1.25 to get her something at the dollar store, and that burnt me up, like, and that was, and that was a breaking point for me, and it fueled a fire in me to, build a life and be able to provide for my kids, right? That there never be an opportunity, that I wouldn't be able to provide for the things that they needed, right? I'm grateful to say today, like, that's like, because of that, I've been able to do that.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, it's, kudos to you for being able to like take that and use it as fuel to like motivate you.
Yeah.
What was something in addiction that you always, I don't know, wanted to do that you never actually did until you got clean? Like, I want to talk about, like, so at this point, I want to get into like the perks of recovery, like why life is fucking good today, and what some of the gifts of recovery that we get. And, I want to share with the listeners, and like, I want to get that excitement going as to why life is good.
Well, yeah. Well, man, life's good today, mostly because, like, of my kids, right? Because I have access to my kids, I can freely do things with them and for them, right? And seeing my kid in dance class for 3 years in a row. I just got to watch. She's doing tap dance this year, and she did acro last year and hip hop before that, right? And so, like, the gifts of recovery just keep on coming, and I haven't really done anything, like, that I've never done before, right? I came into recovery and I thought, I used to love golfing, I used to love snowboarding, and so I said I'm gonna pick those back up, right? And every season since then, I've gone golfing. Every season, I've gone snowboarding, right? And my daughter just started snowboarding this year, and I get to do that with her. Hopefully she doesn't give up on it. But yeah, man,
That's
just
awesome.
just stuff like that. Like, if I got a gift of recovery, man, it's being able to give back to other addicts, right? Letting them know that recovery is possible, right? That when you get to interact with someone, and they get clean and they stay clean, and you see that light go back up on their eyes, and they get a pep to their step, right? And they start believing in themselves, right? Because, man, I walked out of that jail cell with a lot of self-hatred, right? And like, I identified with a level of self-hatred so deep that, I don't know how I made it out, right? My higher power was guiding me.
I love that part too. And, one part that really gets me, what makes me smile too, is when I hear someone talk about setting their first healthy boundary, like when they're able to say no for the first time and not trying to people please. I'm like, you're fucking getting it.
Yeah.
Like, it makes me smile to see that. Self-love, what does that look like to you?
Uh, you know, uh, it sounds horrible, but like, when I came into recovery, like, I had to brush my teeth. You know what I mean? Like, I was
Mm-hmm.
good. Like, and it's sad to say, right? But there's just so many things that, like, I didn't care to do when I was an addict, right? That I have to do today. And so, like, personal care is a big thing, right? My self care, it all comes with my kids, right? Like, I had another kid, and so I got 3 kids, and and I'm blessed and grateful that, like, I see them and I see their joy in their face, and like, that's my self. It's everything that I fought for and that I built for, man. And like, it's still my biggest motivator, right? Like,
It's a gift of recovery, right?
for sure.
Do you got any life mottos?
Life mottos.
Yeah, something, like for me, one of mine is, fear is the edge of my comfort zone. And at the end of, or fear is the edge of my comfort zone. And past that, it is growth. The other side of that is growth. Totally fucked that one up,
Uh,
but little ones like that, right?
I like It Ain't No Gram Like the Program. It's probably one of my favorite ones, right?
Ain't no gram like the program.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. What about God or higher power?
Yeah, so my understanding of a higher power, which I choose to call God, is kind of changed and grown over the time that I've been in recovery. And I think that like I identify with Aboriginal culture, and so I thought a lot about like the Creator, and I was a part of like harvesting processes to get medicines for elders, and all my kids are in native dance. I just love seeing them in their little regalias and dancing away, right? And the self-esteem boost that they get from that, and so yeah, I really got a mixed like higher power. Like I heard it said before, right? Like take what you need and leave the rest. And so like my God is loving, caring, and all powerful, forgiving, and I just take little bits of anything that I need, and anything else, fuck it, I leave it.
You believe in coincidences?
I don't believe in coincidences.
Me neither.
Yeah.
If I have to say what are the odds, I contribute that to my higher power.
Yeah, man, for
100%.
sure. Yeah.
100%. Any goals you got today or anything on your bucket list?
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna finish my apprenticeship training, and I'm gonna buy my first home for my kids, because I don't currently have custody of all of my kids. I was given one back. I'm fighting an adoption this year. Right, like next month. I'm
Okay.
starting this fight for adoption, contesting an adoption for my son. Right, and I have free access to all of them, right? But like, so my goal is get all my children home, right? And I need a bigger place. I'm gonna buy a home, finish my apprenticeship training, and I'm gonna start my own business once I'm situated after my apprenticeship. I plan on going back to RDC and getting my business admin diploma. And
Nice. We'll
yeah,
get you back on the show once you get up and going there.
yeah, man.
So we got the listeners don't know about this yet, but we'll keep it on the hush. So there'll be a surprise, come July for you guys.
Yeah.
So we mentioned earlier, and I said, show me your friends, and I'll tell you what you're about. What's your circle of friends look like today?
Well, everybody I know is in recovery. I have very, very slim amount of friends from my past. Um, but I got a couple, right? And they've been around a really long time, like a really, really long time, most from high school. Some, I was just chatting with my one buddy there. I've known him since birth. He's 6 days older than me, so I think it's important, right? Like I have to maintain healthy relationships with people, but I think it's important to maintain the friendships that you have, right? Like if it's a testament to your ability to get along well with others, right? To be selfless, right? And not always be about take, right? And so I wouldn't say that I'm judgmental. I've come to understand, that today I have to have discernment for the people that are around me. It is important, right? And so sometimes that's what I have to look at, right? Is, who are your friends, right? And if you don't have any friends that you haven't been friends with for a long time, it says something about your character, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. I think it takes time to learn how to be a true friend or a real friend, right? Like that give and take, right?
Yeah, for sure.
One of my things is if I have to call you like 3 or 4 times in a row without you calling me,
Yeah.
you're cat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate to say, but I don't chase people today. Like I'm
Yeah,
not
man.
about to chase people to be my friend. Like I'll put in so much work, and if it isn't reciprocated, I don't have time for that shit. Like next,
Exactly.
unless next, right? What do I want to ask you here? Do you have any mentors in your life today?
Yeah, I do for sure. I have a number of them. So like I got Big Brother Bob. He like I met him in Boys and Girls Club when I was a little kid, and I still talk to this man. He's a good man. And I got a couple older gentlemen in my life that I talk to, and I you know they're the ones that I faced, everything, all the wreckage, right, and all the chaos, and right, I found some healing and some resolution, right. I was able to face the demons, right, and walk free. And I got some men in recovery, that are valuable asset in my life for in different areas, right? Like I got some friends that are, in faith-based programs, and I got friends in fellowship programs, and yeah. So I'm blessed, man. I got lots of people in my corner, and I got people everywhere, man, from Kitimat, BC to here in Edmonton, anywhere I go, Grand Prairie, they're everywhere.
That fellowship helps too. I heard somebody once say, and I never heard it until I don't know a couple years ago, saying, uh, "Oh fuck, never mind." It was something about just friends I haven't met yet. Like when you
Yeah.
go into a room, like there's no strangers, there's just friends I haven't met yet.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like,
No, I
huh,
like that.
yeah, it was pretty good. Da, 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 da. What? Well, I was gonna say, I think I know that. What's the greatest gift you would say you've received since getting clean?
Yeah, man, it's for surely my kids, like no doubt about it, right? But my relationship with my higher power is right up there, man. My ability to pray and be relieved of, the insanity, right? My awareness of my own insanity, right? Like, life gets tough in recovery, and like I got to be able to keep my sanity because, just because the world's acting crazy doesn't mean that I have to, right?
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. All right, I think we're gonna pretty much wrap this up. So I appreciate you being on the show. What's the one thing you'd love to leave with the listeners? I want you to take us home.
Yeah, man, I would say, it's important, to end the stigma addiction, right? Anybody from any circle, any walk of life can be an addict, become an addict, and, if you're an addict trying to find recovery, just know that you're not alone, that there's lots of us out there, right? And we want to help, we want to guide you in your recovery process, right? Uh, you know, yeah, I wish I had more for you. I drew a blank there myself, right? Um, yeah, you're not alone, man. Like, reach out, find some people, heck, talk to this guy, and I'm sure Matt knows some people that can, be your friend and guide you in your recovery.
Yeah,
Might even be me.
there you go. You can reach out to Cody too.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
yeah,
definitely not alone in this world, right?
yeah,
Like, there's a shit ton of us freaking crazy addicts out there, like that are living
yeah,
a clean life today, right?
yeah.
You know.
If you're a man, I don't work with women.
Fair enough. All right. Well, thank you, Cody, for sharing your time with us, sharing your truth with us. I really appreciate you taking the time to, share your truth with us.
Yeah, man.
So,
Grateful to
and
be here. Thanks, man.
awesome. And for the rest of you guys, I just want to leave you with this: make lots of memories, take lots of pics, and show the world your smile. Thanks.